Hello and welcome to the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. We are talking all things off-season right now. I'm Terry. I've got Pom with me. Pommy, mate, hello. The man that doesn't stop.
I've worked so hard. I've been legally enforced to wear glasses. This is what this club has done to me. I am going blind, but no, I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm good. I've had a bit of a break. I wasn't here on Monday. I don't think I was here last Monday. Oh, I was here last Monday. But just zoning out a little bit, trying to get as much mental space as possible. But also, to be honest, this has been the greatest trade period that I can remember having. No bullshit, no nonsense, very little conjecture. Business done at the early part of the period. Everything that we were told from club, from Nick Austin, happened. There weren't any secret little things going on. I've got to say, I've loved it. I've loved not having to turn the camera on for an emergency video this time around.
I think one of the nicest things about as well this trade period is because the leaks have stopped, we've resorted to making up our own either banter rumours, which were openly banter. Bailey Smith, Adam Treloar I saw towards deadline day as well, which was one of my favourites. I was following that. But yeah, it's been nice and relaxed, hasn't it? And to be honest, I did miss it though. There's something therapeutic about you and me sat watching, hoping an A-lister walks through the door, counting down to be disappointed. Something romantic about it.
Yeah. Well, for those who are watching, I don't know how long our viewers who are watching right now have been watching for, but cast your minds back to trade period 2018. We had Cornelio Gate, or Dylan Shiel Cornelio Gate. 2019 was Cornelio, I think it was.
Yeah.
2020 was Papley.
Yeah.
So I just really am enjoying what's happened.
Oh, and a testament as well to Nick Austin that he was very forthright. We'll come on to it a bit later, but he's done his own trade review today, and he's really doubled down on what he said. And I think that's good, because I think for too long we've had a few trade periods. I'm not going to pick on list managers, but you remember 2018, Sauce, pre the draft, said that we were looking for 4 mid-age players to bolster the young list. We ended up not getting that. And the tack was changed. Mitch McGovern came through the door and things in that postseason. So it's interesting to see that he said what he was going to do. No players in, apart from the required player of Blake Acres. Sees it. We have the window end, and that is exactly what we've got. And I think that's planning. That means that I reckon there was a few chances for those at home for us to get involved in these deals, where I think years gone by we would have probably got involved and changed our tactics. I think Austin's just gone, look, Lockie Hunter, fuck him. Do you know what I mean? We'll get Ollie Hollands. He's not on my list. He's not on my plans. And yeah. I think that is a good sign, because that's what Geelong do. Geelong were very open about Jai Clark. I remember doing the first one of these shows with you. We're saying pick 7's a lot to them. They're getting Jai Clark. You didn't hear from Geelong until they came in for Jai Clark, and they just got that deal done, didn't they, as well? It's just through the door. It was just like, yeah, okay, cool. We got Jai Clark. Thanks, boys. See ya.
Yeah, totally. And I guess, I mean, it does make sense as well. This time last year, we're going through crisis, uncontracted players, no coach, board shake-up, CEO shake-up. For the first time, I would say, since the rebuild began, I would say this is the most stable off-season that we've had. I mean, obviously, we're going to touch on what we've lost in a moment and what we've brought in, but ultimately we lose Setterfield as a player on the list. For those who didn't listen to what Nick Austin said today about Will, for example, we walked in hopeful to retain Will. The reality is with footy these days, Essendon came in with a level that we weren't prepared to go to, and that's footy. Will goes with our blessing, and he's given it everything for 4 years. We wish him all the best for his future. He touched on the midfield mix that we currently do have. The fact that, Dave Cunningham's going to be available for day one of the preseason. The fact that Sam Doherty, we unlocked a little bit of something there, playing him a little bit on the ball towards the end of the year out of necessity. that might be something we move forward with next year and beyond. So you're back in the list, you're back in the players. You and I touched on the state of the list and the state of the contracted players, I think 2 weeks ago on this Thursday show. And the core, apart from TDK, they're all signed up until the next 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7 years. So it's a bit strange. Like, is it too good to be true? Are we stable? Like, what's going on?
Just proof that Nick Austin watches this show on a Thursday, and he was like, "Oh, there's a bit of rumblings on Carlton. Let's see what the Thursday show said." And he luckily, obviously, what he's told us and the stuff we formulated 4 weeks ago on the first Thursday show is obviously the plan, which is good because quite often I can tell you, doing this with you guys, I try and follow what I'm told by the club direct, like you are, and they make me look like a dickhead. But this time it was good for them to actually build a plan and preempt what they're doing based on what they've said. And like you say, I mean, that is basically what you're seeing on your screen now, ladies and gentlemen, is what Austin told you 8 weeks ago, what he was going to do. Do you know what I mean? Acres in, 49 in, future fourth in, setters out 68 and a third. And it's interesting, I think, when you see that, the players that have left, very good reasons for. Do you know what I mean? Setterfield's left, can't match the deal. And it would have been foolish. And I always put it this way. Those who were upset Setterfield went, in my opinion, Doc showed a lot more in the 3 games he did have stints than Setterfield has done in 2 years, number one. And number two would be how many clubs were clambering over to get Will Setterfield in. And option 3, imagine if we'd matched that deal, which is rumoured to be 350. So it's about what Blake Acres is. I saw an article today, so they believed it was 2 years at 700k. Imagine if we couldn't match TDK's offer next year. Would everyone be like, should have kept Setterfield? I mean, and lose a ruck who we're going to come on to rucks a bit later. They're as rare as rocking horse poo to find. So, do you know what I mean? I like it. And it's a fairly good balance sheet. If you look at that, it's a good balance sheet. The future fourth as well. I want everyone to keep this in your head till next year. The most used pick in the history of AFL to get deals done is the 4th rounder. It was used 9 times in the trade this year, just as a top up. It is the magical thing. If you have a 4th, magical things happen because it's like you offer a future first, teams go fuck off. Oh, future first and a future 4th, and everyone's like, yeah, come on, off the player.
Yeah, I think the other part as well, we don't know the details around what Will Setterfield would have been paid, as you said before. The other thing as well, I'm pretty sure this is correct. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think Liam Jones's salary is now officially off the books now that this year is concluded. I know he retired, but obviously there was a payout to be made, and I'm not sure the mechanism by which, where those funds come from, if they're part of the salary cap or not. I would assume that they are.
Yeah, so it's done a year in advance. So even though he retired, they still have it's still blanketed on that payment. So Carlton will now have a readjustment for the 22-23 season. The talk is as well, interestingly, just after Austin did that Mackay deal and said that how we're looking at future-wise with the payments is we're also offsetting it against the increases in salary cap that they do every couple of years. And the AFL have already announced that they're trying to push through a 7 to 10% increase this year from the players. So that could be like one of the most genius deals Nick Austin's done because he's got in way before. And obviously your negotiations will change. If a player's agent is aware, well, hang about, there's probably 2 million left in the cap and you're offering me 800? Come on, cough it up. Suddenly he's done that on the old terms. So that's another smart move as well that Nick Austin won't get the credit for, but very intelligent football, that is. Very intelligent negotiation, I think.
All right. So, again, the purpose of tonight is really just to recap the trade period in simple terms for simple minds like mine, Pommy. I'm not really the trade draft expert. I don't really know what's going on. I just ask you and you just confirm everything for me. So, as a whole, you've just said it before. Out goes Setterfield, pick 68 and a future third, which was next year's third round. And in comes Acres, who will most likely be in our starting 22 on that wing. pick 49, and a future 4th. So what happens from here? Is it just we focus on the draft? We have like how many picks do we have? What do we need to focus on now?
Well, we currently got the 4 picks, and if we look at list spots available, so what I've done, this has taken ages. We've gone way back in time, looking at the statements, looking at every little bit of mail we've got, and looked at it. So I can confirm that our rookies have stayed 4. The only one who will have changed from last year will be Matty Owes, and that is because Carlton subscribe to the upgrade rule. So Carlton will actually tell you when a player is moved off the list. We're still operating under the old AFL rules as well that were readjusted last year, so players can spend the extra time on the list. But looking at that, as you can see, our senior list at the moment, and this is it, I've included there Curnow staying. So Curnow staying.
So you're assuming that Ed Curnow is going to be on the senior list for the purpose of this exercise?
Yeah, they could quite easily burn their last pick and promote him to and make him a rookie if they want to. The AFL will allow that. But looking at that there, Carlton effectively they've got to get to the magical number of 44, including Cat Bs. If they want to, that's the max. Carlton won't do that. There's no Category Bs eligible players. So I would imagine that it's going to be the 4 picks in the draft, maybe a chance of a preseason free agent, dependent on if they did go that avenue, with, say, burning the last pick of this draft and making him a rookie A and looking that way, Ed Curnow a rookie A for a year. They could do it that way. But I would assume that it's going to be the 4 picks you see in your draft, and let's have a look at it.
Wow. All right. So I think there's a breakdown as well of this list that you've done.
There is. So this is Pom going anal here. All right.
Next level.
So next level. So what we've done here is the top thing you see is position. So we've got back pocket, 3rd tall down the back, half back, key back, inside mid, outside mid, half forward, key forward, small forward, ruck, and a utility. So that is someone that has done that. And what we've done here is I've based this on their champions data versus where they've started or played predominantly and where their numbers are the closest or above where you'd expect for AFL level. So I want you to remember there's a caveat to this. So there's a lot of halfbacks we've got on the list, but Mr. Austin mentioned Doc could go inside midfielder. So suddenly that's an extra. Now, if they're green, that means it matches up with the average AFL list. And Carlton gets quite a few greens because a few of them can shift into them. So genuinely, you see inside mids, there's about 8. But Carlton can steal 2 from half forward, steal 2 from half back. Do you know what I mean? Even scope, some rumours that Durden, he did play midfield in his junior years. There has been talk that him and Motlop in the VFL have pinch hit on the ball as well. So scope for that. And then the utilities are obvious. That's Domaku and Brodie Kemp. So that could be as well where you could shift them into that 3rd tall. McGovern goes back forward. There's a lot of flexibility on that list. And you understand that's what Austin said today. One of the key take-outs today was he was excited by the list. And really wanted to back this squad in and felt that they had a lot of diversity and building within this group. And they didn't want to disjoint it like they have done a few years ago, where they keep targeting recruits in. And I think I agree with him. I think that everyone, if we actually think about it, we're not Brisbane, where we have a lot of players set in positions. We're Carlton, who have a lot of players that have floated a lot of positions, playing well. So that's going to be something that I think long term we might see in this draft, get a clearer picture of where
Let me just run through. Right. Let me run through the quote he said today. It was literally 2 minutes and 29 seconds of video. And that was his summary of us right now. But I think it's important because there is this, I sense this cloud of uncertainty and confusion from the supporter base around Setterfield and Stocker and what are we doing and why do we let them go for nothing and whatever. So with Ed Curnow, he said that we're working through it with his management right now. Ed will be at Carlton It's just if he's going to be on the primary list or the rookie list, but we're working through those options. So as you said before, primary list, for the purpose of tonight, we've got him on the primary list. If we decide to put him on the rookie list, we've got to burn one of our later picks. Then there was the midfield depth. So he said that we're excited about our midfield depth. We've got 5 bona fide midfielders that carried the load last year or 2022, and we had some injuries which presented an opportunity. We were really excited by what we saw from Sam Doherty in that role late in the year. Jack Carroll is another one we want to get some game time into. Blake Acres has played some time inside, especially at St Kilda. We feel like there are guys there as well as players who missed a lot of footy this year. Cunningham will be ready to go for day one. Jack Martin, Zach Fisher, we feel like there's options to go through that midfield group, and the competition for spots is going to be on, which is exciting. So again, all of a sudden, I think a couple of years ago we're talking about, everyone's versatile, don't know what their roles are they specialists? Well, when we get to a situation like what we're at right now, where you can put a Sam Doherty into the midfield, you can put a Zach Fisher in spurts into the midfield, really you've got your core. You've got your Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Hewitt, Kennedy, right? They're your core, and everybody else, whoever else that player would be, are they really going to be getting more midfield minutes than those 5 that we just said? Not sure.
I want everyone to focus as well on something he said there, where he gave you a really key of what Carlton are doing. 5 bona fide midfielders. The top teams of the last 20 years play 4 to 5 players, large portions on the ball, 70%, high 70s. And then the leg speed, you hear this said a lot, and the AFL media fucked me off with this because it suddenly creates this thing. Bugs Bells helped me out perfectly, as always, mate. Where's Dow? And that's how they get it, because the media say you need foot speed in the AFL. Absolute codswallop. Look at the last 2 Brown medalists. You know what I mean? Slower than my nana going uphill. You know what I mean? You don't need foot speed. It's a myth. You need to think fast. But they play these players in spurts. Dustin Martin, 2017, coming on the ball in spurts, breaking lines. Patrick Dangerfield conned his way into a large contract playing for Adelaide with foot speed, stints on the midfield. Same with Carlton, and you saw it with Doherty towards the last year. Even though he's not fast, he's very quick under a short space, and he gets out of that trouble, and he gets the ball on the boot. And this is where, again, kicking efficiency annoys me. Players who do that don't have high kicking efficiency. Their job is to, and you saw it with Carlton when we got battered a lot. They'd get slow, they'd get stifled, they couldn't get it out of the hot zone. That's where them players turn you on. They come in and they go, right, okay, we're under a bit shit here. We need to get it out into the forward line. Give me the ball. I'll beat one player. I'll get the ball moving. And that is where it happens. So for me, that 5 thing, just keep that in mind, because that means someone is going to be our X factor. Is that a Jack Martin? Is that a Zach Williams? Is that going to be a Doherty? Is it going to be Terry's best mate, Fisher? Could be. I reckon it's going to come from the list, though. I reckon it'll come from the list.
And then there's the wild card. And I mean, we've got one more year contractually to be able to say this, but, young Paddy Dow, there's just always the glimmer of hope of what could be. Whether you're a believer or you're not, I think it's safe to say Paddy's probably down the pecking order now, well and truly in, that midfield slot. But we all thought Matt Kennedy was done and dusted. We all thought Liam Jones was done and dusted. I would argue that Dow has more talent, natural talent than those 2 mentioned just now. So we'll see what happens. But no, it's a good point. So my question is, with this, where I see obviously not Green, the key forward and the back pocket, is that what you think we should be looking at going into this draft to fill that?
Currently, the back pocket is filled by Nick Newman, Sam Doherty, Adam Sard, and obviously Boydie when he was fit, and Zach Williams. And that has been either a permanent position when it was Boyd. Stocker also played that position, not to great effect, or it's been a rotation. Now, I would say out of that defence, Nick Newman will be the one that's probably got a bit of a worry, because you'd imagine that you can't all of them go in there. I'd imagine Boyd will probably put his hand up, but you would say that would be an area there traditionally your back pocket, someone who's good defensively with a bit of pace, has genuinely started in that position. So that could be an area, if I'm Carlton, I'm targeting and thinking, well, if I can get someone with a bit of zip, I've got Sardi, brilliant. I've got Doc, who can float in the midfield, and Zach Williams, who can float in the midfield. Suddenly I can start building that. So if I can find someone with very good kicking efficiency and a little bit of closing speed, suddenly I found a back pocket who potentially will go to half-back flank and become a line breaker. So that would be one. The key forward obviously is an issue. Jack Silvani would probably come into it. Undersized for a key forward, and you would say, although he's a battler, would you trust him full forward? No Mackay, no Kerno. His strength will be two strong forwards coming off the third, and I'm looking forward to seeing Jack and his mate, Jack Martin, hopefully be fit and firing all year to work off them two. So that's probably an area that if I was Austin, I would look at, and that's my biggest concern. The back pocket, we can hide. Players float through that. It's a forgotten position. But the key forward is probably one that, out of all the positions, we're touching wood, and we're hoping both of them don't go down.
Yeah, and obviously we had I know that we had a big injury list, but in terms of the key position or the key forward stocks, I think Harry missed 3 games with that knee, and then obviously Charlie didn't miss a game. So can you bank on that happening every single year? Who knows? Probably not. Can you bank on the injury list that we had this year repeating itself? Hopefully not.
Mate, spot on. And like all the options at the moment, basically band-aids. So anyone you name on that list, Kemp, Jack Martin, who has rolled there at times under other administrations, Jack Silvani, do you know what I mean? They ain't it. TDK would probably, I'd say, would be number one if anything happened in that, and they'd say, look, we'll throw him up there. We'll throw him up forward for a bit, and Pitternet can do the ruck. But that wouldn't be the future. And if you are relying on that, you are going to lose games of football lots, because you've seen Carlton play with one toe. It's horrific. The system requires 2 people to do it. Charlie did okay when he did it. Harry did a whole season with it, although he had Levi. Very hard to do, and it's very easy to pick off. Very easy to pick off. So that's what Carlton have got to have probably look for, having backup.
Right. So that's the list. Now what?
Well, what do we do in the draft? So obviously, as we said, we've got the picks. Carlton have got their picks all good to go. 10 is where it starts. And then you've got, 29, you've got 49, and then you've got 60 odds. So let's have a look. What is the first thing that we're going to do? And Austin has alluded to this a few times. He is looking to update his hand, and there is still a chance. Now, Sydney have talked. There is talk in Sydney papers at the moment that GWS have got an incredible draft hand at the moment. And if you actually go through the players that are there in the draft, you would say that their first 2 picks, which are 5 and 15, 1 and 15, they are going to fill the immediate holes that they have. So this is the first pick suggestion. Looking at 18 and 19, and this is probably Carlton's best chance in a live draft scenario, and that would be giving a future first and a third and 29 for pick 18 and 19, and maybe a future fourth coming back. They may look at working a deal like this. The benefit for GWS is there is a lot of players that suddenly that 20 to 30 role really does suit what they're looking for. And 18 and 19 are probably too early for them to finish their holes, because the 2 players I predict they look at there to fill the holes in their system, probably 5 or 6 picks way too early for them. So they may looking at falling back, and then they've got some really good core mid-depth players a bit later on. So that could be what I think may be something that Carlton look at. And 18 and 19 would look something like 18 would look like this. Charlie Clark would be on the board there. Ollie Houghton, you all know him, famous surname, and there's an outside chance. Left to right has got very likely, will be there, maybe a change of what you're looking for, and right is someone would have to fuck up. But Matthew Jefferson would be that key forward thing. But Ollie Houghton, Sandy Dragons boy, absolute jet, can play midfield and forward. A very, very quick footballer as well. Lightning speed, will be around the board there. Was fabulous in the NAB League as well. 5 score involvements a game. Incredible pace as well. Can really take a game as he showed in the national champs. The other boy there, Charlie Clark, probably one of my favourites. And there's a little bit of Charlie Kerno about this guy. Do you know what I mean? He's been a carpenter as well. Very rare that these kids, when they're doing this, are doing work. This guy is actually doing an apprenticeship as well as taking the piss at junior levels. So shows a bit of maturity, that. 2 goals a game from this guy and 8 score involvements. And this guy here is a dream to play off the feet of Mackay, because he is like a pigeon with crumbs.
Interesting. And just for some context as well as to why we would potentially be looking at getting pick 18 and 19 from the Giants. The quote from Nick Austin, he said it before, but just to repeat it today, he said, we've been very vocal. We've been vocal. We want to try and get another pick if we can between that 10 and 29. If we can move 10 up for the right deal, but ideally we're in a good spot if we stay at 10. We think we'll get a really exciting player there for the future of our club. So we feel like we're in a great spot for the draft. So this is why we would be looking potentially at this situation with the Giants for pick 18 and 19.
Yep. We've been quite upfront on this show. We've been saying that don't believe the media hype. 0 to 30 has incredible depth. So if Carlton can get 4 picks in them 30s, laugh a minute. And Ollie Houghton, to answer your question, Sammy D, he is indeed Trent's boy. So not eligible for father and son, unfortunately. Didn't play enough games for either us or Pies, but absolute lightning kid. Charlie Clark, though, would be the pick of the bunch there, literally ready to go. And fits the ethos of Carlton as well. And 19 could look like this. So remember I told you about Sam Doherty in a back pocket. Lockie Cohen is probably one of my favourite players in this draft. Got the mullet. He's got, that. There's something about him. He just looks cool, which I always think is an important part. He is, if you did Supercoach points, the second most scores from Supercoach in the AFL behind Will Ashcroft. So on that metric, if they did the AFL ratings, the second most valuable player would also be Lockie Cohen. So he's scheduled to go anywhere from 20 to 30. I've got him a little bit higher, but I'm going to take the other people's word for it. Incredible bullet. Going at 87.6% efficiency by foot.
Wow.
All year.
For a whole season?
Yeah, and this kid is Sard pace. Sard pace with elite kicking, loves to break lines, very strong defensively, 188 centimeters as well, 8 intercepts a game as well. This kid is like your ultimate hybrid, but plays like a small. And for Tassie, does play a lot at back pocket.
Interesting.
Love that kid. Love that kid. Need more Tassies. More Tassie players in the AFL, please.
I'm with Ethan. I'm sold.
Hey, he's honestly, I'm a big fan of him, and they're probably my second team, Tassie, in the juniors. I love watching the Tassie team. The other guy is, and you might have heard of him because he's started to bolt up, is none other than Darcy Jones, right? Darcy Jones. Now, bit like Caleb Daniels, wears the hat, so you stick out. Little small guy, 175 as well. Can play on the wing. Can amazingly play on the ball, but crafts mainly 75% for Swans District in the forward pocket. So a real strong interim player, very footy smart, very strong in the air as well. 175, he's small, but incredibly gifted. And he might be someone that Nick Austin goes and says, well, you know what? Pick 18, I get maybe Charlie Clark. I go with Darcy Jones next. Do you know what I mean? I go with Darcy Jones next, and I have a real regular small pocket forward type player. And the other guy is my boy, Isaac Keeler. Maybe Carlton go, well, you know what? Isaac Keeler can play key forward from day one. He would be very efficient, very similar in movement to Charlie Kerno, very clever off the deck, very Buddy-esque in the terms of that he likes to kick on the run. So you'll have a lot of fun getting pissed off with him kicking off from 1 foot because he loves doing that. So that'll suit Carlton. but also interesting, a ruckman. And his ruckcraft has come on leaps and bounds since he first caught my eye last year. Massive improvements. A potential ruck guy there as well, but someone that I think whoever picks this kid up, Adelaide Academy, you can bid on him now and they can't match it. He's an absolute superstar in the making, this Isaac Keeler.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
So that's the fantasy part done, ladies and gentlemen. That's back to reality now. Got you
So
excited.
So that's the what if. That's the situation. I guess we've just found a spot where it would make sense for both clubs to trade based on their situation. If we wanted to trade to get a one, or in this case 2 extra picks in that 30.
Okay, my mate, spot on. And then obviously this is what we've got, right? So Jolly Pets asks for comparisons, Jeeps. You're asking a lot. Yeah, I don't like doing it. I'll try my best for you, Jolly Pet, okay? But Ollie Holland, so this guy is... Imagine if Ed Langdon had children with Carl Amon. You'd get Ollie Hollands. Right? That's how I describe him. That's how... Because they've compared him to Ed Langdon. I think that's unfair, right? Because I think he's got a bit more nous than Ed Langdon. Ed Langdon goes traditionally very short for a wingman in his ball use, where Carl Amon gets a lot of meters gained. Ollie Hollands is pure meters gained. Took the piss in the time trial this year, which is a better time than Sam Walsh run. So that's how fit this kid is. This kid as well is something else. Now, you might have listened to Liam Stocker's interview last week, where he goes, I did the time trial in a good time. The time trial is no indication of being a midfielder. It's the pace you do it in. It's called... It's creative running. It's practical running, they call it. And this kid here is the best runner in the draft, but incredibly accurate with his foot, incredibly strong defensively, and honestly is the modern day winger. And I want you to think of Isaac Smith, who, in my opinion, pretty much won Geelong that final. You've got a winger who can run that hard and not slow down in all day. You've got yourself something special. And this kid here, absolutely incredible. 6 score involvements in juniors, 6 tackles a game. Sexual player.
I don't know if you have this information available, but what's his durability rating out of 10?
Well, when we did it, it was a 9. This kid's never hurt. Incredibly fit footballer. Incredibly fit, keeps himself smart. He's Elijah's younger brother. You know what I mean? He's Elijah's little brother, and he's another guy that, if you listen to Gold Coast speak, one of the hardest trainers on the track, hungry, and Ollie Hollands has stood out pretty much all year. The other one, something for the Greeks among us, the Greek Cypriots. We've got that wonderful name in it, Mateus Philippou.
Mateus Philippou.
There we are. See, that's what we got Terry for. He'll do the translations. This here, what would I describe him as? Audi Bont.
Aldi Bont.
That's going to get everyone excited, isn't it? This is why I don't like doing comparisons, because everyone just thinks Bontempelli. This kid here, incredibly physical, incredibly strong, incredible booming left peg, incredibly smart, very clean. He could play football in a manure factory and still smell like perfume. That's how good he is. Slight-footed, smart, got everything you want. This kid here is a gift, and that's why he's in the next most likely section. Ollie Hollands makes sense, but Mateus is a peach. And why we think he's going to go there, it's quite easy if you look at the draft. So if you look at the draft and we look at the draft order, amazingly for us, some of the obvious selections have gone out. Now, St. Kilda will probably have the most wonderful selection of players, depending on what happens, but they'll probably be between Mateus and Cameron McKenzie. The massive talk is Hawks are well into Cam McKenzie. If they don't, he may slip to Carlton, but likely that someone will take him. But if he's there, it's going to be very interesting for Nick. I think Nick is more intelligent, though, than most. And I think if he says Ollie Hollands now, he'll say Ollie Hollands, even if Mateus is there. I don't think Austin's that kind of guy that changes his mind.
Is this one of those situations where like Philippou is probably the better player, but Hollands fits a need for us more than anything?
If you're in the AFL, people will say yes because they've seen contested possessions. In my honest opinion, what wins you football matches, yes, is Mateus. What Carlton need, Ollie Hollands all day, and proven that there's a reason that the last 4 flag winners, elite wingers, there's a reason. It's the forgotten about thing. And just remember I said that before I talk about the next guy there. Bailey Humphrey. Tell you what, if Bailey Humphrey's there at 10 and Austin doesn't pick him, I will demand the guy is sacked. Bailey Humphrey's been my favourite for a long time. But Bailey Humphrey's, what can you say? This kid here, he's gone through it all. Close mate of his, unfortunately lost his life, took his own life. Focused on football. Mature, mindseted player. A player that when we talk about culture, probably fits in to Carlton in the terms of that he knows things aren't given. And although he's had a few niggles, I'm going to be honest with you, a few niggles, this kid's got dancing feet, can take the game away. And in my opinion, what makes Carlton a better side is when Jack Martin is fit. Someone that can lead out of the square, take pressure off. Bailey Humphrey, tell you what, he's what Jack Martin is and some more. This kid is special, and I guarantee it now. When we redo the AFL draft in 10 years, this kid will be in your top 5. This kid is special.
What position does he play?
Mid forward. So, who would I compare him to? This guy's Bailey Smith. Wow. That type footballer that can go on the ball and really be a thug. Very clean, though. He's a thug like Cripps. Plays tough, but incredibly fair. So he suits that philosophy. And I just think Bailey Humphrey, for me, if he does slide and they look at them little foot niggles he's had this year, he's something special. It would be logical Gold Coast to take him, to be honest, or even, dare I say it, and he'll break my heart, Essendon. He would suit what they're trying to build, but this kid here is something else.
Okay. All right. I still have vibes around Hollands. I'm sticking with him. You said Hollands. You said Hollands to me like as early as like around. I remember it. I might go through the messages. I remember you said his name as early as like around 3 this year.
Mate, you know me, and I love wingers, right? I'm a softie for wingers. I'm telling you now, the guy keeps his width. He's not like our ones who nip inside. And there's chance as well, a bit like Blake Acres, to go on the ball. He started to do that. So, Ollie Hollands, I'm sorry, Bailey, if you're watching this. I do want you, though. Please just come to Carlton. But then 49, we get a bit more exciting here. 49, some exciting little morsels here. So we've gone with likely to least likely. So we'll start with Jake Walker. So Carlton might go with, I think, a little sneaky midfielder. And this kid here has been totally forgotten about. But we have talked about him a few times. Now, we know Austin has a penchant for bottom-age players. He likes them. There's a reason that Carlton like bottom-age players. If a player makes state selection and he's got the option of dropping back and going the year after, technically you're getting an advantage a year early. Jack Carroll is a great example that will play 10 AFL games this year coming up. I think he will break into the first team, and I think he would have been a high pick had he waited. This kid here is, imagine Will Setterfield if he could hit a barn door with a ball. He's got something about him. He's strong. He's the modern day midfielder as well. 9 contested possessions out of 24, an incredible 7.5 score involvements. Booming kick. Also has been that modern day player at 183 that they start to shift him across high half forward. So he's like a hybrid between Kennedy and Setterfield. 7 score involvements. He really gets involved. And very, very strong in that contested situation. So someone that Austin might say, well, you know what? We've got no Setterfield. Let's bring this kid in, because I think this kid here working with Cripper could be really, really tasty. Really tasty.
What's his first name?
Jake.
Jake Walker. Okay.
Good name, innit? Just standard name. No frills. No frills. This one here is a guy that if you'd done your draft order a year ago, would have been inside the top 20, could have been even the top 10. In fact, it was the 11th of this month last year that people were talking about Tom Scully being potentially a top 5 pick. A guy that has been very inconsistent, and this is why I always tell you all, don't get excited about anyone you hear about next year's draft, because they're young men, and it's hard. This next year's hard. He's been very up and down this year, but 50 goals for under 18s.
Well,
The big knock on him is he's never got into the seniors. And a lot of people look at his frame, 202 centimetres, 89 kegs. And the biggest fear for the AFL, and it's my new favourite fear, is you can't put size on. So people shit themselves a bit. So why he slid down is if you take him, he ain't playing next year. Right? But I am telling you now, heed these words. You hear your Jefferson, you hear your Cadman. This kid, if you can unlock whatever he's maybe lost, is potentially a lot better than them. And I am looking at our forward group, and I listened to Dom Aku, who told me that both the forwards talked to the young kids in the defence, talking about missed opportunities and wishing they'd done a bit more when they were younger, and wishing they'd heeded the coach's words and done the hard work earlier so they didn't have to struggle. He's going to walk into 2 wonderful big brothers. And Scully here is something different. And if I was Austin 49, he would probably be the name that I call Tom Scully.
well, there's also the notion of it's pick 49. We're talking about stability on the list. This is the type of pick where you look at a project potentially, right? That very similar to Carroll a few years ago. You pick up Carroll knowing he wasn't going to play in that next year because he was a bottom-age kid. Scully's a bit different because he's a big boy. They always take time. Let's be honest, we're only really seeing the fruits of the Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow labor now, and I guess last year with Harry.
Mate, spot on. And he's one of them slow burns, and that's what the wonderful thing. Carlton's VFL, I love the fact we got Power as the development coach and the VFL, because now he's going to get hands-on game day hearing what they learn. And
that's a team. I was going to say, sorry, that's a team as well. If you look at our VFL side, our reserve side, it's crying out for a key forward that is going to play regular football, but won't play AFL because Charlie and Harry are there.
And if you look as well, who's in the VFL team? Jesse Glassmancaster, a guy that came with huge raps, didn't quite fulfill his talent. Who better to pair him with? Who do you think's got a chip on his shoulder? Who do you think? I bet if you sat down with a beer with Jesse Glassmancaster, he could tell you 58 things he should have, would have, and could have done better. Him working with him every year, saying, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Why are you not doing this, mate? Why are you not doing this? Comes from a wonderful academy at West Adelaide, played with some real good forwards as well. And he's held his own. And I don't believe this whole, he's undersized, because I've seen him play Reza's games against men. And trust me, Reza's, when key defenders get dropped in reserves in Sandford, they're psychopaths in the Sandford. Do you know what I mean? They're psychopaths. They're a very tough bunch down there. He holds his own. So, do you know what I mean? Bit of protein, get someone's nonna to cook him a steak, and he'll be right. He'll be right. Tom Scully, ladies and gentlemen. I love this kid.
All right. Stephen, we'll get to your question shortly, mate. Thank you for that donation.
And then the other guy is a guy that has slid down the draft board, mainly because of the broken collarbone. And that's Noah Long at Bendigo Pioneers. Carlton might go with that forward type player, and he's probably he's got a bit of Eddie about him. Lobs turning inside in the pocket, hitting a dribble from about 40 meters away. Real X Factor type player. And the reason that I pick him is purely because Carlton, I think, lack an out-and-out forward who's a goal scorer. And this kid is a goal-scoring first type player. Has the option as well, a bit like Durden, to shift back into the midfield. He has done that time. Obviously, it was a collarbone there. So I'm trying to pick players here who are durable. Can't count a collarbone, though, as an injury. Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's not injury. It's not soft tissue. This is, you know what I mean? He ran into a concrete post type thing.
Okay. So that's pick 49 potentially, which, by the way, we will have the traditional video that we do here on the channel for every pick that we go to the draft with, and Pommy will suggest a player or 3 or 5 players for each pick. So definitely stay tuned for that. I guess this might be a bit of a preview, but how much can change in 4 weeks, for example? We're sitting here doing our video for the draft picks that we have. How much can really change on the draft board?
A few things. There's still some clubs to do some more delistings, which could... Basically, that's how I do it. I do it off a needs analysis. So it's already starting to change with Richmond's, that you can start to get a feeling of maybe that suddenly becomes more of a priority now they've got rid of him, that they don't quite have the depth. Then things come out, don't they, as well? Things come out, players can get hurt. I mean, famously, Charlie at this stage in the AFL draft was a top 5 pick. And, then he decided to go drink driving, didn't he, bless him? So, I mean, anything could happen. Do you know what I mean? So, like, heaven forbid, a player who's touted to go 3 could get into trouble with the law, and all the teams go, oh, Jesus Christ, don't want that. And suddenly pick 10's a laugh because Carlton are like, hang about, getting a pick 2 for pick 10. So a lot can change, but I've just tried to throw some names. I've just basically what I've done is got my list and just gone, right, 3 names that kind of suit that thing, and we'll talk about them. So you can see things can be done.
Okay, cool. I might just hit Stephen's question now, just to break things up a little bit. So he says, which largely VFL players from this season do you think have the most upside for the side in 23?
Is that VFL, AFL listed players or players that I'd promote?
I'm going to assume, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to assume he means players that played mostly in the VFL.
Jack Carroll.
Yeah, it's really, I think especially with Setters leaving, I already have in my mind personally, I already have Jack Carroll ahead of Paddy Dow. I remember going to that practice match this season against St Kilda and thinking, oh my God, he's got composure, got some class. His first 2 games for us were really solid, tailed off a little bit, but that's okay because of his age and the demographic of where he's at. Also, his body composition changed a lot 12 months ago from what it was then to this season. So if he gets another one of those types of preseasons in there, I'm with you. I think Jack Carroll is going to be the one that really steps up more than what we're realizing right now.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the big thing as well with Jack Carroll is, I remember when we drafted him and we talked about him on the show, we talked about the Pendlebury-like ability to find space. And I still stand by, if he'd stayed a year, he would have been top 10 in the next draft. I still think he would have, another year development.
You mean if Jack Carroll had have decided to stay in the pool?
Yeah. I think he would have gone in top 10 because I think he's got that gift. I think you saw the first AFL game as well. The next game, he didn't quite back it up and he started to get a bit rushed and looked a bit overawed. But the first game, he looked like he had so much time, especially when we gave him that 10% on the ball. Mm-hmm. It felt like he played 200 games and he was like having the ball and he was like not phased, taking a step backwards and then bombing the kick onto it. So it's a huge thing. And I think another year in him, look out. I'm a big fan of Jack Carroll.
All right, cool. So what's next? 66.
Here he is.
Oh, yes.
Here he is. So if Steve is asking about all the players in the VFL, the biggest mistake I think Austin's made is not bringing Tyrese last year. This kid, for me, has incredibly improved from day one to where he was at the end of the season, combining just real mongrel type practical football as well from Tyrese this year. He got a bit of pace about him, but I love his bravery. I love the fact that he has no regard for the safety of himself, certainly has no regard for the safety of his opposition players. He plays like a pro. If you ever watch Samoa play rugby union, you can see the Samoan heritage in there. It's a battlefield for him. It's his ball. He ain't giving it back. And he never... I'd love to see this kid round 23 versus Collingwood. Because I'll tell you what, he would be looking at all of them in the eye and Jordan De Goey wouldn't know what hit him. Because he doesn't lose. And he's improved so incredibly. His ball use has improved. His defensive awareness has improved. He started back pocket and high half forward. high halfback, and has played that intercept role. He's become really versatile down the back. An absolute, he is basically, when we used to play ploughman, he's a ploughman that you ain't going to come onto this show and quit blue abroad for.
Right. Well, I'm curious because we spoke about him 12 months ago with one of our later picks. I think it might have been in the 60s. Could be wrong. Why would he be rated in this bracket in the 60s if he's played a full year in the VFL and improved? Why wouldn't he be a second round pick or a third round, early third?
Just genuinely, we find these senior players, they won't do. There's a guy that I'd imagine North will take, Ethan Phillips, who has taken the piss in VFL, but he won't go early. They'll prioritise young players. And then about that 40, 50, we start seeing the senior players. But Tyrese is brilliant. My mate there, Manny Costa, I know he's a huge Pies fan. I'd love to see Maynard versus Tyrese, but a very good simile to Tyrese is Maynard, a guy that can play a lot taller than he is, but also can play a little bit smaller as well. Incredible footballer and deserves to be on the AFL list. I've not seen many players at this football club lose an opportunity and hit the ground as hard as he has. Like, it brings a tear to your eye when you watch VFL. When you see where he was round one to where he was at the end, he looked like a footballer all of a sudden. Towards the end, you were like, Jesus, he's a proper footballer, isn't he? And I love him, and it's the way he goes about it. And, you know, I'm a big anti-advocate of being tough. I fucking hate saying it. This guy's practically tough. So he's tough, but he's tough in a way that actually wins you games. Big fan of him. Hope to see him in the AFL. Okay. There we are. Also, we've got to talk about other people. Tywell Dewar is up next. This guy here is a 185 little pocket rocket. Now, I've seen a lot of people talk about Sydney Stack. This guy is a Sydney Stack type player. So can play in the small positions down back, can play in the small forward positions as well. Totally like a Swiss Army knife for football. West Coast Eagles next gen, but they haven't got a pick after 26. So he'll be free for all. And you know what WA small forwards are? If you're ever looking for a small forward and you're a little bit lost, go to WA. It'll help you out. Because there's another guy as well, Jed Hagan, who's a senior age player who's banging them in for fun. But this kid here has got that X factor that now. It's a real compliment of Jesse Motlop, I think, and someone that would be maybe a tasty look for Carlton in 66. Because it's a risk-free pick here now. Once you're here, risk-free.
Right. Risk-free. And then who's this third fella?
The Lem Dog. So Remy is a big boy. Big boy. And we talked about Tom Scully. This is his mate. So Carlton may look, Nick Austin might look and go, well, shall I pair two South Australians together? Do you know what I mean? Shall I pair two together? And Harry Lemmy, big 199 forward, 94 kegs. Absolutely tore it up. Averaging a goal a game, even playing as a bottom major. Kicked 11 goals from 5 in juniors. The local coaches around there are calling him Riley Tilthorpe 2. So that's quite a big accolade because he was highly rated. Big, strong boy, and another guy as well for them to work off. This guy here is probably more in the physical ruckman's role and physical forwards role as opposed to Scully, who's more agile and athletic, but an incredibly talented footballer and someone that, again, at that pick, Carlton are having to fill a hole. So he's got upside.
Okay. Interesting. Well, this is awesome. That's a great little summary there. What about... There they are, the delisted free agents. I've seen Sydney Stack's name in the comments a lot tonight. So here he is. It's like we knew he was going to come up. So how many of these would we be looking to get? How many could we pick up?
Well, potentially there's one. If they rookie with pick 68, they may take 2 in. I'd say probably if they did rookie Ed Kerno, I think they will rookie him as well. I've got a gut feeling that they will do. That would say to me that Carlton might just take one and learn from lessons and keep one for mid-season draft, just in case you have a mid-year injury that's not long enough to put on the long-term injury.
So we would give up pick 66 if we wanted to put Ed Kerno onto the rookie list.
Yeah, so the AFL have announced that they've kept that loophole open, that Carlton can burn picks to put them on that. Onto the rookie deal, so that could be it. And the 3 guys I've picked out just of interest, they're not exciting. I wanted to be exciting, but tried to be practical. So we've got Jake Steen first. Maybe Carlton go with a key defender. He's very young. Hasn't had the greatest opportunities there. Few little knocks on him, but maybe something that Carlton look at and go, we've had great success with Lewis Young. Sam Durden's there now. Second chance. Maybe Carlton look at that and go, well, look, let's give him a year of VFL, look at it, and let's try and push him forward and see what we can get from him.
I liked him a lot. I liked him a lot when he first came into the league. I think I remember he was a decathlete.
Yeah,
he's a very fit. I think it was a category B from memory that ended up getting onto the senior list.
Yeah, and by all reports, 2019 he won the development award at GWS as well. So they were actually super impressed. I think it would be a risk-free thing. Do you know what I mean? It'll be a little bit of backup for him, but I mean, you can't category B him. We'd have to put him on a deal. So that would be why we'd be rookie dealing him. The next guy I've got is not the most exciting, but I thought, shit, that key forward does keep worrying me. And I looked at all the key forwards and I started to get physically sick reading the names of delisted key forwards. I was like, can't have him. Jared Brander is definitely one of them players that I just don't think. Obviously, he's been delisted twice now, but I just think when I've watched him, I don't think he's found his club. No, it sounds weird. I don't think when I watched him at GWS, I don't think he wanted to be there. I think there was a reason he didn't like it. I'd love it to get it out of him, but he didn't seem bothered. He didn't seem excited, but he's been around there. He's won that. He's the size. He's played key forward. He can cover the back half of the ground as well. 23 years old. For a year or 2 years, I don't mind having that backup as Harry and Charlie. He's not going to have to play, but I don't mind it. And I think it might be something that's going to cost next to nothing. Last chance saloon.
Okay. And then there's Sydney Stack, which actually opens up a fresh conversation around our culture. 12 months ago, the conversation was around Tyson Stengel, who, let's be honest, I think Stengel's indiscretions were a lot more serious than Sydney Stack.
Yeah, so he was caught with pills in his pocket, and that was a big misdemeanor. He confessed it. I mean, obviously, if you actually break out what Stengel did and compare it to what Bailey Smith did, there's not much difference. But you know what I mean? One of them was banned from playing AFL for a year and was made to go and play country football, and then was brought back and won a flag. So why I like Sydney Stack is he had that indiscretion. If you go back and read his apology, I don't think he took COVID serious, and I think that's probably the death of him. That's probably the death of him for me. I like Stack, though. He was played forward this year by them. And remember, me and your Uncle Terry were in a pub, and there was a Richmond fan who cheekily asked, I think Sydney Stack's a better footballer than Walsh. And we agreed that Stack was probably the second best kid in the draft. I just think we're talking about culture. We've seen what happened to Tyson Stengel. And I remember this time last year, I think we did a poll and it was like 55% of people were against Stengel when I suggested him, right? And I said, you got back your culture in. Now the culture's infinitely better than last year. I think Stack needs a bit of love, bit of TLC, and I just think there's something about him. Well,
the notion of the talent is there at a pretty high level, I would say. Pretty high level, talented player. The next layer to that is, can he find, or is there an environment out there which can get the most out of his talent? We literally just saw Geelong do it. It happens across the league. The question is the Carlton Football Club real when we say that the culture has changed, and do we have a strong enough group? Do we have a strong enough leadership group, and young core leadership group as well, for a player like Sydney Stack to come in with very little expectation? I dare say he wouldn't be costing us too much to have on the list. Do we have the right environment? Do we trust our environment right now for a player like Sydney Stack to come in, mature, get back on the straight path, get another chance, and, what have we got to lose? If it doesn't work out, you can pretty quickly rid him of his services as well. We saw what happened this year. I mean, Tom Williamson was just gone just like that. So, it didn't really mess up with the harmony of the group, I wouldn't have thought.
I can see it working. Do you know what I mean? I can see it working. So with Sydney Stark, thank you very much, babe. Sydney Stark, when I look at him, I look at Richmond post the Dimmer scandal, right? Now, I'm only speculating here, but my impression from watching a lot of Richmond was that fractured, that fraternity, and you didn't see a lot of players together anymore. Do you know what I mean? Something obviously happened. They look very disjointed this year. I think Sydney Stack is one of them players like Stengel, and Stengel's been quite open. The community spirit at Geelong, he felt like he was a long-lost brother. He talks about Eddie like he's his older brother. He talks about the playing group, how they've taken to him. And he used a phrase which I thought, where he said they opened the doors of redemption for me. So they made him feel like he could change, but he was going to be welcome for that change, and he was going to be safe in a protected environment. You look at Carlton now, and you hear the words that Harry Mackay used the other day, that it's now all about development. The development's in our hands. It's a player-focused environment. We have control of our destiny. I think I can see Sydney Stark walking in TikToks with old Cotters and Motlop. You can see him moving in with Motlop and Durden, do you know what I mean? And them working out how to use a washing machine. Do you know what I mean? You can see these guys growing together. And I think that's the wonderful thing about Jesse and Durden's relationship, is how they've grown together. There was a great thing. I think you were there, Terry, weren't you, for that sponsors event where they were talking about learning to use the dishwasher, learning to cook together. I can see Stack loving that environment of young players together. He's a little bit older, so he's almost going to be like a little big brother there. And he's got some young brothers to lean on. And then he's got wonderful inspirational leaders like Cripper, who has been there. He's struggled. Doc has been there through struggle. Charlie knows what it's like to be injured and being an absolute hero talent. Harry knows what it's like not to have opportunity and have to wait. He's got a really good group of young, hungry men who can look him in the eye and say, mate, I feel your pain. Welcome to the club. We've got you back there, buddy. And I think he's an incredible footballer. And you've got to remember, only 3 years ago, he was held in the same esteem as Sam Walsh. Same esteem, but as a defender, as a potential forward. Can we do it again?
It's a big question. I'm sure it's going to be tabled on the inside. I'm sure it'll be discussed, whether it's a 10-minute conversation or a 10-hour conversation or a 10-day conversation. I'm sure there will be some clubs out there that will be assessing, do we have the environment, and does Sydney Stack have the commitment level to turn it around?
Mate,
I'll be honest. What Stengel did
him
this year has changed my opinion completely on this situation. The Stengel for me was so far down the rabbit hole of misdemeanor, and I just didn't think he would be able to find a spot. And then when it was Geelong, and then when Eddie Betts was there, it made a lot of sense. Who knows? Maybe Sydney Stack goes to Geelong, but I don't know if there's enough room right now. So I guess, yeah.
We look at his misdemeanor as well, and we break it down. He broke curfew laws and got into a fight at a chicken shop, right? And there's a lot of men in the audience and a lot of girls who hasn't had a few beers in a kebab shop and maybe got into a... I mean, I have. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, do you know what I mean? We've all done it. Do you know what I mean? Right? We're not talking about this guy ran guns for a living. We're talking about he didn't take the COVID lockdown laws serious. He'd had a few beers. Some dickhead said something to him, and he gave him a slap. Do you know what I mean? Well done, Sydney. He hasn't murdered anyone, but correct. I do think there is temperament issues they talk about. We've got a really good young group, and I'll tell you what, I know from a personal level, a good friend of mine is a Richmond fan. This guy was one of the few players who went out and gave 5 to 10 minutes of his time with him to do an interview and stuff when the other players were like, nah, fuck him, and was very humble. And that suits the group of our boys as well. Do you know what I mean? That he is giving back. And I think we're different to Richmond fans. We love our players. I think as soon as Sydney Stat runs out round 1 against his old club, here's the cheer squad saying you've made the right choice. And he kicks that goal and we all get around him. Pom's got a chant on the watch along. The fans are cheering. He'll realise he's home and he'll realise he's got a bit of love. And you watch his temperament change. I think he's an incredible footballer and an untapped talent.
All right. We'll bookmark this show. We'll see what happens. We'll touch on a few more players over the next coming weeks. I think Jake Arts is another one that has been brought up, but maybe we'll save that for next week so we have something to talk about. But, mate, this has been great. Thank you so much for putting this all together.
My pleasure, mate. And I can't wait for Stat to go to Geelong and win the flag next year.
Win the Coleman. Awesome. Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. Hope you enjoyed yourselves tonight. We'll see you Monday night for the Blue Abroad show. Pommy, we'll see you tomorrow on the Pommy in Oz YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet to the Pommy in Oz YouTube channel, tonight's the night. Tonight is the night. So make it happen. Pommy, we love you. Thanks very much and have a good one.
Much love, everyone.